Good evening. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting of November 13, 2023 to order. Clerk Tamer, please call the roll.
Joyder.
Here.
Barimas. Here. Hill.
Here.
Schenko.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Cahill. Absent. Toludo.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Nudera.
Here.
Bastido.
Here.
Nardini.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Irby.
Here.
13 present, 1 absent.
13 present, 1 absent. We have a quorum. On to public comment. Clerk Tamer, has anyone signed up to make public comment this evening?
Yes, Mayor. We have Victoria Ludkowski.
All right, if you would step to the microphone behind you, state your name, address is optional, and you have 3 minutes. Proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Victoria Ludkowski. I live at 640 North Kenilworth Avenue. That's in the 3rd Ward. And let's see, I wanted to let you know I've lived here for 34 and a half years. We really like Elmhurst. I wanted to talk about upgrading, resurfacing the streets in our ward, specifically the north-south streets, like Kenilworth, Emory, Indiana, Parker, Howard, etc. For example, on Emory, across from the Korean church, they had some construction there, and instead of cementing the road, they put asphalt in, and it kind of sank because it's a different material. It should be concrete. And there are a lot of cracks in the concrete and a lot of potholes, and it's very bumpy to ride. The proposal to upgrade and resurface this area has been brought before you in 2014, and since then it was denied 3 times. The proposal is once again up for your approval. Please approve this so that all of Elmhurst is a city that we are proud of. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And we do not respond during this meeting, but someone from staff should, I'm sure, will contact you. Thank you. Is there anyone else that has signed in?
No, Mayor, that's it.
All right. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to make public comment but did not have an opportunity to sign in? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will close public comment. On to the business before the committee, review of the fiscal year 2024 budget. City Manager, do you want to take it from here, make any
Yes, thank
comments?
you, Mayor. And thank you to you and the City Council for giving me last Monday to our family. I really appreciate everyone's concern over that. Tonight we are going to start with Public Works. As you see from the budget review schedule, there's a number of Public Works related divisions, and then some even beneath that. And we hope to get through the tax increment financing funds today. At a minimum, if we can get through everything on here, that would be outstanding. But of course, we're happy to answer all questions that the council has. One housekeeping note, you received a new page 2-49 at your position. Please replace that in whole in your budget book and just recycle the one that's in there. There was a misprint on that one. So with that, I will turn it over to Public Works Director Stan.
So we're on page 2-48.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Director.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's my pleasure to present the proposed Public Works budget tonight for 2024. And I have here with me our key staff in Public Works. I've got Corey Taberi, our Assistant Director, Paul Burris, our Utility Operations Manager, and Kent Johnson, our City Engineer, that will help me field any questions that might come up in our discussion tonight. And what I'd like to do just for starters is to touch on some highlights from this year, as well as outline the department's major focus for next year. And as you know, Public Works is charged with maintaining the physical assets of the city, much like the Finance Department is charged with maintaining the financial assets of the city. These assets that fall within the confines of Public Works include 160 miles of streets, public buildings and grounds. Those buildings include City Hall, Public Works, the police and fire stations, as well as our parking decks. We have about 6,700 street lights and 25 traffic signals that we maintain, roughly 22,000 public parkway trees. We're responsible for the production and distribution of clean, safe drinking water through 175 miles of water main, the collection and treatment of wastewater through about 148 miles of sanitary sewer, and the water reclamation facility, stormwater management, solid waste collection and recycling, engineering services, and fleet management. So just to kind of go through the different functional areas of the department, in 2023, the city completed the first neighborhood traffic study and also began work in 2 adjacent areas. That work is ongoing, and those funds are proposed in 2024 to continue this approach through other neighborhoods. We've also continued the work of the Public Works Citizens Academy that was completed this past spring with a 5-week session that helped kind of our residents enhance their understanding and awareness of some of the things that we do in Public Works. With respect to street maintenance, our street maintenance group continues the routine maintenance programs that in the last year included completing about 600 asphalt patches, 30 manhole repairs, and replacing over 1,500 signs in the city. Those sign replacements happen because the sign materials degrade over time and need to be replaced in order to meet the standards that we have to meet. This group also in our street maintenance section is responsible for a lot of our CBD maintenance tasks, including the repair of our brick paver sidewalks, the staining and cleaning of the benches downtown, cleaning and maintaining the look of the street furniture, sidewalk cleaning operations that happen 2 times every other week, during the summer months, and things like routine street sweeping, patching, and crack filling in this our activities that this group takes care of. Roadway striping is also an activity that this group undertakes that in particular looks at streets that were paved within the past 5 to 7 years or where striping is deteriorating or needs maintenance. And in particular, this past year, the city completed contract striping of Schiller, 2nd and 3rd Streets in the downtown area during the overnight hours. Some of the cost, you'll see in some of the budget materials associated with our street maintenance, some of the cost increases in drivers that we're seeing in this area is an increase in our concrete street patching costs. We are also, in 2024, the budget reflects the start of a new 5-year stormline cleaning program. We are also expecting to see increased costs for contract street sweeping services due to inflation as well as the cost of debris disposal as a result of those sweeping operations. In our facilities and building maintenance area, we've continued to hold quarterly electronic recycling events at the Public Works Garage. We're completing routine building maintenance, elevator maintenance, and maintenance to our HVAC systems in our buildings. During this past year, this group provided contract administration for an upgrade of the HVAC system and a building automation system at the Public Works Garage, which is typical of the kinds of repairs and maintenance that we would see at a building that is now approaching 24 years old. Phase 3 of the Public Works Garage, which is the land to the south of the garage, is beginning this year with the demolition of existing structures on the expansion site. And this is going to enable the city to expand and consolidate material storage, and public works facility needs on one location over the next 3 to 4 years. It'll remove items from the water reclamation facility site to allow for future expansion for phosphorus or other potential IEPA treatment requirements. Increases that we're seeing in general in this area with respect to costs that impact this group are related to the cost of water, which is something that was just discussed a little bit about in the Finance Committee meeting, and the fact that city facilities are being allocated a cost for the water that they use going to this next year, as well as natural gas costs and various capital improvement costs going into next year, including continued replacement of carpeting at City Hall, some work to do some upgrades to the City Hall elevator, as well as an EV charger installation for city fleet vehicles. Our forestry group this year received its 43rd consecutive Tree City USA designation, which is one of the longest running in the state of Illinois. I think there's only about 3 or 4 communities that have received it longer than Elmhurst has. And to earn this designation, the city must meet the standards for urban forestry management that are specified by the people that oversee that program. And those agencies include the National Arbor Day Foundation, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, and the National Association of State Foresters. So it's something that the city should definitely be proud that is a continuing effort on the part of our forestry team that is leading that. This year, the Forestry Division planted over 825 trees, and the proposed budget for 2024 accounts for the supply and planting of about 650 trees, which is returning to a more typical planting schedule for that activity. The Forestry Division also completed a parkway tree inventory this year that is being integrated into the city's enterprise GIS system. Our electrical group, in addition to completing routine maintenance of our streetlights and traffic signals, they completed several larger maintenance projects and system upgrades this year. This group replaced 42 deteriorated steel or concrete streetlight poles, which is part of a multi-year project to replace all steel poles with aluminum poles, which are more resistant to corrosion. Also, work that was completed this year was the replacement of traffic signal controllers at 4 intersections, which was part of a 3-year program to replace all aging and obsolete controllers. One thing that I think is really exciting that this group completed was done about a year ahead of schedule was complete a multi-year plan to replace all the city's streetlight fixtures to LED ones. Since 2018, the electrical division has converted over 6,600 streetlights to LED, and the city has received about $340,000 of incentives from ComEd to help facilitate this work, which obviously significantly offset the cost of the project and resulted in a payback period of just about 2 years to the city. And this has also removed a load of about 8,700 kilowatt hours per day from the grid in the city of Elmhurst. For next year, this group in this area, we're seeing increases that are related to the restoration of contract painting of streetlight standards. This was something that I think was not done in 2023, as well as replacement of traffic signal poles that are beyond their useful life, and some contract costs for signal maintenance that are being passed through by IDOT on signals that the city has that are on partially on IDOT right-of-way. Also for 2024, there is $200,000 to continue with a 5-year plan to upgrade the city's 300 street light controllers. These controllers many of them are more than 40 years old, and they have components that can create arc flash hazards as well as reliability and safety concerns that are being addressed through this particular projects. this project, excuse me. And in this year, we completed about 60 replacements and hope to continue on that pace going forward. In our fleet group, I will say that this year has continued to be a very unpredictable and challenging year to be in the automotive industry, and in particular to be able to try to run a municipal fleet operation. And it continued to be characterized by ongoing supply chain issues, lack of materials and parts, and uncertain ordering windows, as well as long manufacturing times. Our staff has worked very hard to try to stay ahead of this uncertainty as much as possible, and has done a great deal of research into purchasing options, refurbishing equipment, and so on. As those purchasing processes move forward, alternative fuels are always evaluated for each vehicle and piece of equipment, with the goal of lessening the fleet's environmental impact by using the best pool of alternative fuels technologies in the right applications for our operational needs. Currently, 57% of the city's fleet operates using alternative fuels that range from propane to biodiesel, electric, and hybrid vehicles. There were many vehicles that were recommended for approval in 2023 to simply secure a spot in an ordering queue anticipating delivery in 2024, or in a few cases, 2025. And we expect these types of conditions to continue through this coming year. On the utility side of Public Works in particular, this year, as far as the major accomplishments, we were able to initiate the construction of the McKinley Stormwater Pumping Station rehabilitation project. The design of Bundle 5 for the water reclamation facility was completed, and that project is out to bid. We expect that to hopefully be going to the Public Works Committee at their meeting on November 27th. That project is really focusing on the clarifiers, some of our chemical feed systems in terms of either disinfection or the removal of chlorine from the wastewater stream, and so we look forward to starting that in 2024. There are also a number of force main projects that have been brought through the design process this year that are in bidding, and again, hopefully proceeding with construction in next year, including the Atrium Sanitary Lift Station force main, the North Industrial Sanitary Lift Station force main, as well as the upsizing and relocation of a gravity main on First Avenue within the sanitary system. Also completed this year were some very important electrical repairs to the Jackson Stormwater Pumping Station. And then as we head into 2024, we also expect to begin design of Bundle 6 for the water reclamation facility, as well as go through a process to update the facility master plan as part of that. With that, I'd be happy to open it up to questions. Okay, so we just want to go page by page. So street administration begins on page 2-48. No, I've on the J forms. Not on 248. No. We have. I'm sorry. Can I borrow yours? Oh. Thank you. Page 2-49 has the J forms for street administration, and Notable on that is item C. It includes an additional $50,000 for continuing with the neighborhood traffic study program. I think I may have touched on in the comments, as well as item F. We have automotive lift replacement and the fuel island replacement on the capital side at the Public Works facility next year. Let me just keep going. All right.
What I would add to that, though, of the two projects that Stan just talked about, the Park District does contribute to those. So this is total cost of the project. Park District shares 25% of that.
Street and alley. Oops, go ahead.
Mayor, do you want to stop with each division for questions? Or
Yeah,
would
I
you
think
like
we'll do that. I was just thinking, like, I'm trying to see, I'm having a hard time lining up some of the lines here with the actual page. Let me see. Okay, so why don't we go with street administration first, and we'll kind of go through each section. So I'll open up to thank you for the presentation. Sounds like the department's had quite a lot to do this year. That being said, there still may be questions. Alderman Bram and Alderman Hill.
Thank you. The only question I have in regards to the street administration would be exactly what you touched on, but my question is, and that's the building improvements, the fuel island work. My question is, do we, and I don't know if it's budgeted for this upcoming fiscal year or not, but it looks like it, is that something that is needed near term, or is that something that we can consider moving out a year or two? I guess, what is the reason for redoing the fuel islands? Is it leaking underground, the underground storage tanks? Is it replacing them with, I don't know, different alternate fuels, or what's the rationale?
I'll take a crack at this, and then if I miss any detail, I'll ask Corey to back me up. But so at a certain point, the tanks that are in the ground are warranted for a certain lifespan. And as we start to approach the end of that lifespan, our insurers start to get a little nervous about their integrity and whether or not they will cause a problem. And I don't know that we've gotten to that point where they've actually kind of put us on notice to say this has to happen right now, but I do know that that's a concern. And so we would like to be able to have those tanks replaced before we get to a point where that does become an issue. That's
The reason why I'm asking is because later on in this budget, I'm looking for additional dollars for some other areas, right? So this is one of the areas that I was wondering if there's an immediate need, high priority, or if this is something that we could push out if the city council feels that one or more of my motions in the future is something that we should add additional dollars to. I'll throw one out immediately. Sanitary sewer lining, during public works discussions, it sounds like our I&I is increasing significantly. Well, those are my words, significantly, not Paul's. But to me, to reduce what we do for sanitary lining, we should probably make an attempt to increase our sanitary lining. And I'm just looking as I go through the budget of areas that maybe we can decrease spending, and this was one of them. We can talk further during the circle backs. If I would like to just make this a circle back as a potential of maybe pushing it back a year or two.
Alderman Bram, which line specifically?
It's under building improvements on page 248, 2-48, 570-100. Building improvements, I believe it's the J form expands on it on the next page on 249, letter F. So it'd reduce some of which, because that also includes the automated lift replacement and phase 2 building improvements.
All right.
Thank you.
Alderman Hill?
Thank you, Mayor. So this may be a question for the city manager, or perhaps Kent Johnson, but it's taken me a while. I think I've noticed something that other people haven't, that residents have a lot of questions about traffic. I just picked up on that recently. So with that in mind, my question really is with regards to on 249, the engineering for the additional neighborhood traffic study. I like that number, and I'm curious, do we know what sort of bandwidth KLOA has to support traffic studies? Is there a potential, I'm going to do the opposite and say, is there potential to spend more money here to increase the rate of traffic studies? Is that possible, or do we know the answer to that at this point?
Yes, I think we have the answer. I want to just ask Kent real quick. So the amount that's in here. Yeah. So the amount that's proposed in the budget, you're kind of asking about a capacity standpoint, and I think there's two parts to that. There's a capacity standpoint on the part of the consultant, but there's also in terms of city staff and timing these things. And so one of the things that's important in conducting the studies is to make sure that the traffic count data that is gathered, we really want to do that at times when school's in session. And also not only when school's in session, but when the weather is decent, so not really in the middle of winter. So we really look at kind of like spring and fall. The dollars that are in this budget will give us an ability to essentially double up on what we're doing and be able to go through a neighborhood study process in the spring as well as one in the fall. And we think from the staff capacity as well as what the consultant is able to do, that we think that's kind of what we can manage and do a good job at. So taking it beyond that, I think right now would be difficult.
If I may, and I thought that might be a constraint, but one thought I had, and I don't know if this is probably a circle back, but I know that we divided up the city into quadrants to do this study. Would there be a possibility to cover a larger area with the same pace of studies? Any way in which we can address, I think you see what I'm getting at. I want to hopefully see if we can move these studies ahead, because we're finding that they're so key to a number of other decisions.
So I'll take a shot at this. We did talk to the engineer about that, about increasing it to, as you get less areas. It's more than quadrants. I think there might be 15 areas, plus or minus, that we've broken the city into. And we've consulted with KLOA on that, as well as to what makes sense boundary-wise, where traffic flow goes. And they feel that the way we have it kind of portioned out now is really ideal for what they do. I wish we could get them done sooner, I really do, because I agree with you that that is one of the number one concerns in the community.
Thank you. Just wanted to ask on that. I appreciate it.
Anyone else? Alderman Irby.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Director Blicky mentioned the smart traffic controllers replacement. Did I get that correct?
We're replacing the traffic signal controllers mainly because they're the ones that were out there are aging, or were aging, and we're really becoming obsolete, especially in terms of being able to maintain and get parts for them. So the work that was done, or has been done over the past 3 years, has really been kind of more of a typical kind of system upgrade to be able to get components in there that not only are new and are going to be reliable, but also will be able to be more easily maintained if there is a problem. But there isn't, I guess I wouldn't necessarily categorize them as smart controllers.
Okay. I think that where my question was going is if we have these boxes we're putting out, and let's say they have some future capacity that today they don't have the ability to go, okay, here's the traffic coming on Robert Palmer into York, into the T-bone there, and let's change the light schedule right now because it's backed up, and let's change the light priorities by X to allow that traffic to quickly or quicker to get through that. And I'm not a traffic expert, as you can tell. Do we have that capability when we spend, say, 50,000 on the traffic controller? Can we add, excuse me, can we add to those? I mean, are we stuck and they're not that smart?
So the city already has several traffic signal, some interconnected systems up and down York Street, along St. Charles. Those are systems that are all coordinated and working together. So it's certainly taking a step beyond every intersection working independently. But to be able to make some of those real-time kind of adjustments, that is really taking it a step further than I think we have the ability to currently. I think some of the components that we are putting in would give the city the ability to do that, but that's a whole other level of management of the system. And that's not something where the city has people that would, I think, either be qualified or have the time to be able to do that. So it's possible, but it's really taking it a whole other step than what we're currently able to do.
Yeah, I just heard the word smart, so I got excited and wondered how smart they were. Thank you.
Don't try talking to one of them. All right. Other discussion on streets administration. Alderman Toledo.
Well, this is not just streets administration, right? Because this talks about the public works facility, the same line item that Alderman Brand was talking about with building improvements.
Has the automotive lift in there as well as the fuel island?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I wasn't speaking out of turn. I guess, my concern is that there are some major GEO-bond dependent projects in not only the capital expenditure budget, but now, as a result, percolating into our budget, our operating budget. And we have a $40 to $80 million police station, and we have a $9 million public works garage rebuild, and we have $150 million for our wastewater and our sewer treatment facility. And I just don't think that Elmhurst can do all of those things in the same years. And I think that we really need to force some prioritization of those things, because right now, staff has done their job and they've put all of these things in. And if we don't say that we can't do all of those things, they're going to go do all those things and we're going to have to issue bonds. And I think I just want to circle back, I guess, on that. It's a bigger question than one line item, but we're going to have that conversation as a council. Do we want, what is the priority? I don't think it's appropriate to do all of those things in the next 3 to 5 years, which is how they're currently planned out. So I don't have a specific question. I guess I'm not framing it very well. But I bring it up here because $9 million, in 2025, after the year that Alderman Bram asked about, after the fuel station, the fuel island replacement, and the lift station, the following year is a $3 million number. And I think that's the beginning of the $9 million for the full public works rebuild that's in the CAB. And those are both $4 million and $4 million GEO bonds a year, 2 years apart from each other. So I think maybe it goes back to the question that I asked at our last budget meeting, which was kind of what would the tax levy have to look like if we do all of these major capital dependent projects that are currently contemplated in this year and next year's operating budget and in the 5-year CAB. That might help the council have that prioritization discussion. So I guess when we think about when that circle back comes back, we might want to allow for a more robust discussion than, a $100,000 line item.
Yeah, I think, so what you're identifying is what's the impact of all of the major projects capital, and I think we could just call that generally one circle back and ask staff to sort of educate us to how it's expected to be paid for from staff perspective and what the impact would be. It's fair. Okay. Thank you. Alderman Bastido?
I agree, we need to prioritize, but just to clarify, just because it's in the budget, I mean, the council would have to approve the issuance of bonds, right? Like, it's not something staff's just going to go do. So I totally agree with you on the prioritization. I just want to make sure whoever's, new to the council or watching, right, everything, this isn't the approval of a new police station or the issuance of bonds. We would have to, take further steps to do that.
Let's, if there's nothing else on streets administration, we'll move on to street maintenance, I believe, is next.
Mayor, one question. I think we all answered Alderman Hill's question. I don't know if you still wanted that as a circle back or not. On the traffic study.
Has your question been answered already?
You sounded very confident, City Manager, so I don't think I need to circle back on that.
Thank you, Alderman.
All right. Page 2-50.
Version 2.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. This might be a long one. This is the most interesting section, or one of the most interesting sections of the Public Works budget. First off, I want to start out with the concrete street, on page 250, line item 531060, concrete street patching. And this is more of a comment. I noticed that last year in the area of town, my area of town, where there's concrete streets, that there was $0 allocated last year, this current fiscal year, 2023, as well as the upcoming year for 2024, for no resurfacing in the area at all. I'm curtailing that into this line item because the concrete patching has essentially stayed static with an increase, not to do more concrete patching, but to do the same amount at a higher price due to rising costs. So I'm not going to say anything in regards to this line item of changing it. We do need to do at least at the bare minimum what we have done in prior years, even though that the cost for concrete is rising. But I want to comment in regards to street resurfacing, which I believe is part of the line item on 2-51, roadway improvements, 570140. And I think this encompasses a lot of items under this topic of roadway improvements. And I wrote out some of them just to clarify for those who are watching. I believe it includes a project, and this is all in the capital expenditure part of the budget, but I'm not going to be able to tell you all the pages. Northwest Elmhurst roadway improvements, Villa Avenue roadway improvements, Cayuga. Residential concrete street resurfacing is in there, but it's budgeted as 0. So even though it's mentioned, there's no dollars allocated to it. Asphalt street resurfacing, Riverside Monroe and Route 83 intersection improvements, inlet cleaning, industrial concrete resurfacing, Alma Avenue resurfacing, Butterfield and York, I think that was intersection, et cetera, et cetera. I won't name the 2 to 4 more that's all included in that line item. I have great concern, and I'm going to ask for this to be a circle back because I don't know where else in the budget this is noted. For line item 570140 on page 251, if we can make this a circle back, because I would like to revisit it. And one of the reasons is because this fiscal year, absolutely no work has been done, and we're static in regards to concrete patching. And I did a nice little nifty graph. This upcoming fiscal year, it's showing absolutely no budget dollars allocated. you can see, and this is what my resident Victoria came and spoke to a little bit, even in years that it was budgeted, there was two other times, not including this fiscal year and this upcoming fiscal year, that there is no residential concrete street resurfacing done. Back a while ago, I believe it was 2014, there was a plan put together which was a 12-year plan. To date, it's more like a 19-year plan or somewhere around there. I'm guesstimating here since I didn't take notes on that. The other concern is, albeit that 2023, this fiscal year as well as next fiscal year, no dollars being allocated or spent, obviously. Last year's budget, the subsequent years, starting in 2025, there was dollars allocated at $620,000 compared to $540,000 in previous years. This budget, again, notates no spending in 2024, which I'm not in agreement with, but lowers the following budget year items back down to $540,000. So essentially, there's no makeup for not doing any resurfacing in this area for 2 consecutive years on top of the 2 previous years over the 10 or 12 years that I have already notated. So if I look at the 4 years that if we move forward with this current budget of not spending in 2023 and not spending in 2024, we're essentially removing roughly $2+ million of any work in this area that was budgeted in previous years, or at least 2 of those 4 were budgeted in previous years. Long-winded way of saying that I am not satisfied with doing absolutely no work and not increasing concrete patching for this area that has concrete streets. I have a study that I don't remember what it dates back. I know Corey and Kent seen me wave it on the dais in previous meetings. That was done many a years ago that said these streets need to be redone, and I would say it's probably over a decade now. I know there has been a subsequent study, and I know city staff is doing a great job with prioritizing streets. The 160 miles of, see, I listened, Stan, 160 miles of street throughout town, and I know that's a challenge. But I also know that these streets have been documented of needing improvement, and there was a plan put together in 2014 for a 12-year plan. And I'm concerned, and if staff has the answer for this, I'm concerned that there was a decision made last budget year to do no work for none, not reducing the amount, but no work budgeted, and therefore no work done in this area for 2 consecutive years.
Does staff want to respond now, or is this complete circle back?
I mean, do we know why there was nothing budgeted for last year and this year? I guess would be my one outstanding question, and we can conquer everything else as a circle back.
Yeah. So the reduction in funding for that item in particular was due to the dip in the post-COVID revenues for the city, and it was really just having to prioritize within the kind of the fiscal constraints that existed.
I appreciate that response. I will present further details and my case, I guess, in the time frame of doing the circle back. I mean, we're talking, I want to say all those other projects. So if you look at the capital expenditure budget, right, it shows concrete, street resurfacing, and then it shows asphalt resurfacing. But you can't just look at that budget line item that says asphalt resurfacing, because all those other projects that I mentioned are also asphalt residential streets. So the budget that's in where it just says residential asphalt is a lot larger than that because of the fact of those other improvements throughout town. But I appreciate the response, and if we can just make that a circle back for later time.
Very good. Alderman Brennan?
So along the same lines, I have to admit, I agree with Alderman Bram on this. I'm trying to get refocused around something in the cabin. It's the priority. disposition of some of the KEBs. So, for example, Public Works Garage Phase 3 is a priority B.
Alderman Brennan, you want to reference, is that 2-15,
I'm in the KEB section,
Yeah.
so KEB 28,
28?
in the back of the budget. So I just want, and I'm assuming priority B is the proper, disposition for that KEB. And then I look at, what Alderman Bram was referring to, with respect to, where was it?
32?
Yeah, 32, and that's an A. So I guess from if the priorities are correct, it doesn't make sense that a priority A would get 0 and a priority B would get 350,000 for this fiscal year. And just a couple other data points on that. I think there's an opportunity to continue the analysis of, there was another KEB in here for alley maintenance or surfacing. Alley rehabilitation, it's an A, but it has $210,000 associated with it this year through the balance. So again, there's a long story here, I'm sure, but for me, unless the alleys are in horrific, condition, I don't know why an alley would potentially take precedence over Main Street travel. So I have interest in understanding this a bit more, and I know that staff has put a lot of logic into this, so I would also like to sort of double-click into that and understand a bit further. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to need some explanation of how the priorities relate to the budgeting.
Christina and I were just talking that in 2024, we had preliminarily budgeted the concrete street work to be in the industrial area where TIF 5 is. However, TIF 5 couldn't support that, so we deferred concrete work from that for 2024 and did not roll the 25 concrete back into 24.
I think we're going to need a little bit fuller discussion, but that'll be a part of it.
I
Thank
do
you.
recall, sorry.
Go ahead, Alderman Brennan.
I do recall that from, prior discussions, so, okay. But I think, I think it's worth revisiting.
Very good. Other discussion on street and alley maintenance? Alderman Bastido.
I honestly don't know if this is the right place to ask this question, but you can tell me if it's not. So under streets is vehicles, and I saw in the KEB, I believe it was the KEB, a couple new charging stations for municipal vehicles. But I was wondering when we could have the discussion, because I feel like I hear from the public quite a bit about our public charging stations, how we only have a few of them. I'm not even sure if we are the ones maintaining them, but that they will break, so we go from 4 down to 3 to 2 to 1. So I didn't see, and I just want to confirm, that there's not any budgeted for public charging stations. There's nothing budgeted for next year for more of those. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I think there's a KEB sheet for them, but I want to say that was...
That's only municipal vehicles, right?
Well, it was grant, there was kind of grant dependent, looking for funding for public charging
Oh,
stations.
it was? Okay, I missed it then, if that was in there.
Is that, yeah, that's, yeah.
78? Okay. But that's grant dependent?
Yes.
Okay, so there's no plans for us then. Yes, you're right, it is. Electric charging stations and parking decks. Okay, that's exactly what I was asking about. Okay. So there's 2 of them. And then dependent on the receipt of grant funding. Have we applied for those kinds of grants before? Is this a new effort?
We do have a federal grant application that is pending for EV charging stations. We're in a holding pattern waiting for an answer.
Okay. Is there an option, aren't there private options too, where if there's advertising attached to it, that there are private funds sometimes that pay for charging stations? As you know, I'm not familiar with this. I don't own an electric vehicle. I don't plan to buy one, but I just hear about this a lot from residents.
We have been approached on that by a business owner, and due to our sign restrictions, that didn't work for the company that installs those.
Okay, so that's not an option for us to have one that we don't have to pay for, but has advertisements on it?
Correct.
Okay, so that would require a change in our zoning,
Our sign
Sign
code,
ordinance.
correct.
sign ordinance? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Alderman Bram, then City Treasurer.
Thank you. My first question is, and I thought I located it, but I can't find it in my notes, so please tell me if this is the right section to bring this up. The new sidewalks for Crestview, Van Auken, and Indiana, is this the section where those dollars are allocated? I see Christina saying absolutely not. Okay, so I'll cover that at a later time then. One question I had under other services, which is on 2-50, 2-50, other services, which is, man, my eyes are getting bad, 5-3 and a whole bunch of nines, 9999. I believe the J-form says that it's yeah. Is it 10 o'clock? Street sweeping, contract street sweeping. I know in years past, we purchased a street sweeper, or we have 2 street sweepers. I don't remember how many we have. But has city staff looked at relatively recently on, is it the most return on investment, most cost-effective, I guess, way to continue to contract or actually do that in-house? If no, I respect that answer.
Yeah, I don't know that we've done any kind of recent analysis. I can tell you, though, just from what I see out there in the public works field is that communities have generally gotten away from doing their own street sweeping for lots of reasons. The cost of owning and maintaining sweepers is substantial. The other issue, and one of the things that's a part of this number, is the waste disposal has also gotten to be more of a complicated and costly part of that service. And so for us to sort of be able to transfer that cost, that is the responsibility and liability for what happens with those sweepings to a contractor, that's the reason we've kind of continued to go the route that we have.
Definitely makes sense to me. But we do own, I thought we had one relatively new street sweeper and one older one that we are keeping as reserve. Is that still the case?
Yeah.
Okay. And we use those just in special occasions and not for typical maintenance?
The end of the parade.
Could be special.
At the end of the parade?
Yeah, I think it allows us to respond to either emergencies or special events, things like that, a little bit better than we could otherwise.
Okay.
Right, and we go out in advance if we know we're going to have heavy rains. We can obviously kind of deploy that more quickly and where we want it to clear inlets.
Just one other question on this section on page 251. Man, I need a magnifying glass. So this is actually, I think, a good thing. Storm sewers, 570220 is the line item. The proposed for 2024 is 25 grand, and we just estimated spent $655,000. So a lower cost is always a good thing in my mind, but is there a reason, a significant drop-off in what we plan to spend on the storm sewers? For the capital outlay, that is.
So storm lining, it was a storm lining project in 2023.
Okay, great. So we wrap that up then. That's why there's minimal dollars this year? Yeah.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
City Treasurer, then Alderman Hill.
I have one comment and one question, and apologies, Alderman Bram, I was trying to follow your math earlier. I believe you were naming a couple projects that were paid out of other funds, but the primary of this line on 2-51, 570140 line is KEB 30, KEB 31 is what's primarily going into that line item. That's about 4 million of the 5 million budget. Some of the other projects you named, I think, were other, like there was some from the motor fuel tax fund. I don't think that changes your question on the prioritization. That seems like that's still a question, but just.
If I may respond. So that, if you look throughout the KEB, that account number is throughout various items. So it's on 31, like you mentioned, but it's also on KEB 32, and that's why I listed all those projects.
But some of those are paid out of the motor fuel tax fund, like
Oh, that's what you're
250
saying?
is what I'm saying there, yeah.
Gotcha.
just for that. And then circling back to one thing you just mentioned, were you talking about on 2-50, you made a comment about the storm sewer cleaning needing more money. Was this the line item you were talking about in the previous section?
In which section, which line item?
So you were talking about additional funds for some projects when
Oh.
you were talking on 240. Is this the line?
No,
Okay.
sanitary lining. That's, I think, under the MUF, I believe. Look at this, I feel like I've been doing this for a while. So yeah, that's under the MUF, which is a totally different area.
And this, so then question, I guess, for staff, on the 300K 5-year project, is that, how do you kind of come up with
What line is that?
that number? 250. Do I need a magnifying glass? 531100, the 300K item. If that's like an every 5-year type of deal, how do you kind of budget for that then?
That's
Oh,
the goal is to get. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it's basically, it's the start of a new 5-year cycle to go through the storm sewer system.
And how often is that? So it's starting a 5-year cycle, not a cycle that occurs every 5 years? Am I understanding that correctly?
Right, it was in through the past time it was done was in 3.
I see.
So this is the same work, just extending it out a couple more years. And I think part of that was we're inspecting, we're kind of monitoring, the system, and we not only saw the results from the last time doing it in a 3-year cycle, but then also over the course of the past couple of years to sort of monitor and see how debris is filling up the system or not, to be able to kind of reassess and then spread that out over a 5-year cycle instead.
I see. Okay, thank you.
All right, Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm trying not to get into the weeds too much, but I couldn't help but ask on 2-51 on poor old 570140 roadway improvements. When I look at the J form on that, it says budget includes the purchase of a gas post pounder, and it looks like an increase of almost $1 million. So maybe you can just tell me what that is. Is that a very is it drilled to the center of the? No, I'm kidding. But I mean,
You've heard about the $5,000 toilets on the airplanes in the military, right?
I mean, I don't know what this does, so maybe this is a totally normal cost, but it seems like an awful lot.
It is not for a post pounder. What was, we talked about this earlier. What was
This isn't supposed to.
there's a number of, there's a number of different projects that are in that line item. I may kind of turn the, I don't know, Kent, if you want to.
Riverside.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I'm a little disappointed it's not $1 million gas post pounder, but
We can't
But-
afford 2 of them, Jacob.
but there is a number of projects included in there that are just not broken out in the description.
Correct. So we have inlet cleaning for $80,000, contract paving for $3,950,000, parking lots for $67,000, Monroe and Riverside for $235,000, the design of Alma Avenue reconstruction for $50,000, There's design engineering, I believe it's design engineering costs for Villa Avenue, which is $418,300.
Do you mind,
Director, yeah.
Director, could I just ask for a corrected sheet?
Sure,
You know,
yes.
you don't,
We can go back and look at it, but if we
Okay.
could get a
Sure.
replacement sheet for next meeting.
and if we did purchase that gas post pounder, I would like to try it out.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 2-52, there are a few programs listed where we have restored some previous budget cuts. My question is on item B, the residential stormwater management programs. I think demand for those programs fluctuates, and I'm wondering if we are hitting our maximum amount of funding each year.
The last few years, we've expended the entire budget for that program and actually turned away people, if you will. So it still remains a very popular program. It does fluctuate year to year depending on the rain we get, but we're asking for a slight increase in the program to try to accommodate what we're seeing in terms of interest.
It's great. I'm glad it's still being used. Thanks.
Other discussion? All right, so we'll get the updated sheet and we'll come back to it next time for a moment.
I'm sorry.
Alderman Brennan.
I feel like I'm asleep at the wheel. I'm going to go back an item.
How far back?
To the beginning? No. So I'm actually on 249, the traffic study. So with the increase that we're proposing there, I like that. As I look at what I think is a KEB that's related, KEB 43, we have $100,000 to implement, the findings from the traffic study. And I guess my question is, I have no idea how much stuff costs, right? So is $100,000 enough money to do what we found in College View as well as the next two studies?
I think it's going to depend. We don't know what the result of these next two is going to be. We came up with that amount taking a look at some of the recommendations that were in the first one, and there's some of the regulatory sign changes that we were able to make, and we were able to make those just with kind of our existing maintenance dollars. But there's also elements of that we haven't, and I would say that they're going to total up to maybe that, maybe a little less. So we kind of use that as a bit of a placeholder going forward. That number, it may fluctuate lower or higher depending on how those go. But those were kind of some initial thoughts, especially after just coming off of the first one.
Okay. I certainly hope if, we spend the time and energy to do the studies, that we have the funds to actually implement the findings. So, and from a priority KEB perspective, it shows as a C. I would argue it's higher than a C, but I don't think that really matters. But I think it's super important to implement what we find. So thank you.
All right, we'll go back to where we left off, street maintenance. Is there anything else on that? All right, we'll move on to
Sorry, one question. Can I ask if this
Vestito.
goes now? In the KEB, there is an item for bike and pedestrian plan improvements, KEB 55. What does that fall under? I think it's technically public benefit under Public Works, but I don't want to ask about it now if you guys are planning to cover this section later. Sorry.
It's a later section.
That'll be a little bit later in the capital projects / public benefits section. So just a few page turns will be there.
Got it. Under 2-62.
That and the sidewalks are both there.
2-62. Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else on street and alley maintenance? I'm afraid to turn the page, but all right. Snow removal, 254.
No changes planned to the snow removal program this year. And
Continue to hope for a light snow year. Budget accordingly.
All right, any questions? Alderman Toledo.
Alderman Jensen's going to kill me, but this has bothered me for a long time. I don't know if it's under snow removal or electrical, but in the Schiller parking deck, there is a heating elements in the ceiling, and I believe that it's for when we have really big snow, you bring the snow up there and it melts, and then it goes down into the system or something. But I guess really my question is they're on 24/7 in the wintertime. So is there a way to put a timer on that or reduce the cost? Because as everyone knows, electrical cost for heating is expensive. And I'm sure it's de minimis, but it's just, every time I drive by there in the winter, I'm like, why are those on? There's no snow.
We can certainly look into that. We installed those because that area does freeze because of the exposure. So it's not necessarily that we bring snow there to melt. It was more protective. But we can look into that.
Interesting. Okay. It does not need to be a circle back. I would just like it as a follow-up for staff to take a look at that. Thank you.
Other questions? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. On page 255,
Definitely going to kill me.
it looks like we're having about $42,000 jump in full-time wages, 510.
Let me just make sure, because we're on snow. Are we on the same?
Isn't that snow? Oh, sorry, I skipped over to forestry. I was so
You're
excited.
thinking about pine trees with snow in them, but,
Yes.
all right, we can go on to.
No
just wanna make sure
questions.
No one has.
I do need those glasses.
City treasurer, on snow removal?
Yeah, it's a global question, but it was triggered by snow removal. Director Coyle, some instances where we have like the estimated in 23 that has a shortfall, is this a candidate that would have assigned fund balance to the subsequent budget for a line item like this?
So for an item like salaries, we would not. So the only time we would assign fund balance and carry it over would be part of the budget carryover process, and that's something that we provide a memo and a list of items to City Council of the items that we're carrying over from this current budget year and adding to the next budget year. So we will make the City Council aware of those.
All right, I'm going to take a chance going to forestry. Alderman Bram?
Yeah, I'm going to have to borrow Alderman Brennan's glasses, it looks like. On page 255, for the full-time, which is the first line item, 510100, did we go through this year without a full-time staff member? It seems like we're jumping up about $42K for next year, and then another $40K the following year, or is that cost of living increases, or combination of all the above?
Yeah.
We were shorthanded for a little while, but nothing significant that could certainly account for the difference that you noted.
Okay, it just seems like every year it's an additional $40K, so I didn't know if we were running lean by one employee or not. One of the other items is Dutch elm disease, which I like to see, and this is line item 531155 on the same page. I like seeing that the number is, bless you, not going above the 50,000, and even sometimes only spent a few $1,000s on this line item. Do you guys have a status on where we are with Dutch elm trees in town, public Dutch elm trees?
I think that's two different lines. You're looking at 531155, right?
Right, which is
Okay.
public Dutch elm disease and ash removal.
Okay.
And private.
Same line though, right?
It's two different
Items.
trees, yeah.
I can tell you how many Parkway elm trees we have remaining.
Yes, hopefully very few.
Our current elm tree population is about 1,137.
Not a very few.
So that's down from 2004, it was about 2,800 at that point. So it's slowly declined.
Okay. I know it's been an issue, and our budget item has been consistent, so which is a good thing. I was hoping for a lower number on how many are left, so we could put this in the rearview mirror. The only other question is that same page, 531135, landscaping maintenance. From 2022, it was at 184,000, and now proposed for 2024 is 301,000. So not double, but getting close to double over the last couple of years. Is there a reason for that significant increase over a couple of years?
I don't have the detail in front of me, but I believe that the dollars for the First Street landscaping project are budgeted in that account. So that would be a, I'll say temporary increase, but that would be an increase due to that project that was planned to go over a few years, and then it would go back down.
Okay. If we can just confirm that, there's no need for a circle back on that one. It just seems like over 2 years it increased significantly, this current fiscal year, and then proposed for the next couple of fiscal years as well.
Alderman Bastido, then Alderman Brennan.
So the First Street landscaping, that in the CAB is listed as a priority D, but you're planning to go forward with that one next year?
I believe so, yes.
That's a project that has been in the budget for a number of years, that has carried over or been deferred in the past, and so that's why it's in the budget now.
Okay, so can we get more information about that, like who requested it? And, I mean, I assume it's been pushed back for a couple of years because it was low priority, but that's why I was surprised when I saw it was priority D, that it's ahead of other things.
We can get more details on that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Brennan.
So my question's also about First Street landscaping. So it has been out there for a while, and I see that it, crosses the next 4 fiscal years. Is there some correlation between that and the new train station? I mean, is it being spread out for that reason?
It's not really, I wouldn't say there's any connection in the staging of it between that and the train station. Any landscaping improvements that would take place along that corridor would be outside of the project boundaries of the metro station, its project itself. And they can really take place independently of the train station work. So there is not a connection between those.
So is there, just trying to do the math, so is there $300,000 of work to be done? Is that?
For the First Street landscaping, there's $74,000 budgeted for that.
But
The other components of that are irrigation system, mowing, landscape bed restoration, contractual mowing.
So it's an ongoing, so is it a capital project, or is it an ongoing?
It is. I think
expense?
if I can maybe try to answer, I think what you were asking, Alderman Brennan, was because in the KEB sheet, it shows some dollars over the course of a few years, correct?
Yes.
So
What's your KEB page?
the plan,
It's KEB 45.
the plan would be to proceed with the landscaping improvements in pieces over a period of a few years, instead of doing everything all at one time. So it was really just, it was a way to kind of phase the work in as opposed to just doing it all at once.
Okay. I mean, this has been out there. I'd be a proponent of doubling up in 2024 and accelerating, at least compressing it to 3 years, but that's just my point of view on it. We've been talking about it for some time,
Yep.
so, thank you.
Alderman Bram.
I'm just going to follow up on Alderman Brennan on that, and there was a couple of questions on this line item, so I'm just going to throw it out there that if we can make this a circle back.
I already asked for that.
Oh, maybe I'm asleep at the wheel.
Circle back it is. Alderman Irby.
Yeah, two items on forestry. One is the trees. Is there a way we can do a circle back and get a breakdown of how many trees we've gotten from like $244,000 worth of trees in 2022 versus 90,000? So is there a way we can get a tree breakdown of how many trees that gets us?
Is there,
What's your line item?
That
yeah,
would be
40?
there was a split, didn't we?
541, 300.
So just last year, we did a split between general fund and MFT in terms of the dollars being used for trees. So I think that's the reason you're seeing the variation in there. But the number that we plant year to year is generally consistent. I think the number that I stated in my initial comments, I think is around 600 or so. The past couple of years, we did about 1.5 times that because, was it 3 years ago? Was it 2021? 2021, there was no tree planting. Again, just due to the fiscal constraints of the city, there was no planting that year. So then there was essentially an accelerated planting schedule the next 2 years to do 1.5 times. And now we're kind of trending back to a typical year.
Okay.
Alderman Irby, on page 3-21, you'll see the balance of that $75,000 additional for trees.
Okay. And then the second item was the vehicle expenditure, 570,600. We're still in forestry, correct, Mayor? I've got 870,300. Looks like 6 vehicles. Right now I've got 2 left in the 2023 budget, and I'm showing 1 left in the 2024 budget. So I'm wondering where the 6, that makes us off 3 cars or vehicles. We can circle back. I'm sure we'll find it.
Corey, is that something you can answer? It's a combination. We have some that are planned to be ordered this year. There's some that'll were ordered last year. This might be easier to put in a follow-up memo.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
There's
Just wanted to-
vehicles that were ordered and then they were canceled, orders were canceled. There's a lot behind kind of what you're seeing there.
Right.
So
We'll circle back. I'm fine. You got the notation for that? Thank you.
yes, yeah.
Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. This is one of those questions, like forgetting to ask somebody's name so long it becomes too late to ask for their name. But I don't think I understand how priorities change. So talking about First Avenue landscaping, if it's a D priority when it was first put in the KEB and it moves through, it's still a D priority, or it moves up to A by benefit of not being addressed? In other words, it's still, even though we have not addressed it for a number of years and it's a D priority, it's still a D priority now. It's not a fait accompli that we're going to handle it as an A priority because it just has been out there a while. Am I understanding priorities correctly?
Yes, it has not changed from a D to an A, but as we've been carrying it over a number of years, it has remained in the budget as a project that we're going to do, that we were planning to do, unless priorities have changed to rebudget that or do something like that.
So the priority of D still ranks as how staff would prioritize at a project that needs to be done, but it's simply come up on the budget this year because it's been pushed off.
Correct.
Okay. So even though projects are in the budget for this year, we still have to pay attention to those priorities, even though they seem like they've been pushed off, but now they were on the budget last year, correct? Was First Avenue on the budget last year?
It was, yes.
Okay. Okay, good. I think I understand it now. Thank you.
Anyone else before we move
One
on?
more of those.
Alderman Bastido.
So what would the process be then? So, because the total cost of landscaping would be $300,000 over a couple of years. So what would the process be if this first phase that's in the budget now is approved?
The actual, sort of the actual sort of.
Does that go through a committee? Does that just,
Sure. There was, earlier this year, we went through kind of a comprehensive planning process to look at the whole corridor to see what would be possible and come up with, identify areas that could be targeted for some of these improvements, just based on things like the right-of-way that's available, what else is out there currently, things like that. We also have some regulations that we have to comply with respect to the railroad in terms of distance from crossings and height and everything else. So then the next step for us would be to start with an area and go through the process of putting together construction documents, specifications that reflect kind of the work that was generated as part of the concept plan, and go to bid and hire a contractor and get the work done. So we're kind of at a point where it would look like many of our other projects. It would come up through committee and council for review and approval of the contracts.
okay, so it could be in a couple of phases where at first it's paying for the design and then
Correct.
eventually the construction?
Yes.
All totaling $300,000. Okay. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to electrical.
Just a couple items to note in this cost center. One is the increase in contracted painting for streetlight standards. This also is the cost center where we have the contractual maintenance costs with IDOT. They're being allocated to this area, and just some traffic signal pole replacements.
Any questions or discussion? Poor electrical division, no attention. All right. Rubbish disposal on page 259.
Nothing to add on my part.
Alderman Bram.
Yeah, I just want to highlight this item because the current estimated cost for rubbish, which includes the yard waste and leaf pickup, et cetera, is, $3.5 million, right? For the residents, I want to kind of highlight that because it is a very large expense. We do try to accommodate with the leaf pickup and the free, what is it called, fall days for the garbage, et cetera. I was wondering if staff recalls, where are we with this contract? Are we in year 3? Is it a 5-year contract or?
Extended.
We are currently in the midst of a 3-year extension to the original 5-year contract that I believe will take us through, is it 2025? Yeah,
Through 2025?
believe so.
And it was an extension on the original 5-year?
Yes.
Okay. I'll just comment, and this is just a general editorial comment, but I think this is very important to go out to bid as often as we can. Without my understanding with that comment from staff 8 years without going out to bid to see if we can get cheaper prices or a better program is a little bit concerning to me, because again, talking, this upcoming 2024 at a man, my eyes are failing, $3.7 million. So I have had comments from residents this year about composting, increasing the length of composting that we offer, the timing of leaf pickup, can we do another free pickup for the refuse? So I just think it's very good to practice going out to bid as often as possible for this, to see what other options are out there and what we can do to continue to evaluate and improve our services in this area.
City Manager?
Just to remind the council, when we went for the extension, we did look at comparable communities. We looked at our rates compared to other communities. We talked to other refuse haulers as well about the current contract we had and the extension that we were being given. So it wasn't just a blank, let's just give them a 3-year extension. We did a lot of due diligence in that.
Comparisons, but not going out for bid is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anyone else on rubbish disposal? Moving on to municipal buildings, page 2-36.
Where's he going? 236.
There were some cost increases here for natural gas expenses, the cost of water, which is now being allocated to city facilities. And there's also some of the project costs here that I mentioned earlier in terms of City Hall carpet replacement, the elevator modernization, and EV charger installation for city vehicles.
All right, anyone on municipal buildings? Last call. On to central maintenance equipment 260.
The only items I would just highlight here, the couple J-forms as far as equipment maintenance. We've got some increase in repairs to kind of some of the larger shop tools and work bay equipment. Also seeing some cost increases relative to contracted repairs and some of the division's software that's used in vehicle maintenance.
All right, any questions? On to capital projects 2-62. Alderman Bram, then Alderman Brennan.
Yes, thank you. Again, 262, line item 570150, sidewalk improvements. I believe this, according to the J form, is where the sidewalks are budgeted, and the sidewalks being glayed, which I believe that was one that the residents petitioned for at $50,000, and then Indiana for engineering and Crestview for engineering as well. I just want to make this a circle back because I think there will be further discussion on this line item, and there's currently discussion in Public Works Committee about sidewalks, so I'd just like to have a deeper dive into this. No information required or requested from the city. I just think it would be better to talk a little bit more at length.
Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm on CAB 55, the bike and pedestrian plan improvements. I think this is probably a circle back as well. The 498,860, I'm curious of the breakout of that. Specifically, there are a number of crossings, sidewalk crossings that I think should be considered for modernization for safety reasons. And I'm curious how much of the 498 is set aside for upgrading crosswalks.
Okay.
Circle back.
Yeah, circle back, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Bastido.
So I know Alderman Bram already asked for a circle back on sidewalks, but, we currently have 2 successful petitions in the works for adding sidewalks on Glade and Glenview. So I think it would be helpful to know, assuming they move forward in 2024, could you get us a more detailed cost estimate for what those costs would be?
Sure.
I think it would just be helpful. Normally we, I think, do plan on around $50,000 for that program, but since we know that there are 2 in the works, and they're going to be kind of happening on the front end, I'd hate to not budget enough if those are successful, so that then they would have to wait a whole other calendar year. So that
Sure
would be
thing.
helpful for circle back, please.
Is that total in there for those 3 projects right now?
For the ones that were referenced in terms of the petitions that are out
Yeah.
there, no, it is not.
Glade
Okay.
is in there, but for 50,000, but Glenview's
Yeah.
not. And I think maybe we could get more accurate estimates if
Yes.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe this addresses Alderman Bastido's question a little bit, at least from my end, but is Glade, that's still in the petition process? That has not gone back to the block for approval as of yet, correct? It has? No, okay. Thank you. Yes, I'm correct. All right.
All right, anyone else?
It hasn't gone back for approval.
I think we are on to motor fuel tax, 316.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Go ahead.
City manager or finance director?
Yes, Christina is going to take that.
All right, so the MFT fund starts on 316. And then looking at 318, the MFT fund is funded by the majority of which is the state motor fuel tax. The local motor fuel tax funds the general fund. So there are there's several divisions for the MFT fund. The first is on 319, which is the streets division that funds a portion of salaries and wages, and then also funds some of the road programs for the MFT fund. So some of the projects described in the CAB where MFT funding is noted, is included there. One item I should note for the MFT fund, there were some projects in the CAB that were MFT eligible, but we're funding out of the general fund due to the balance of the MFT fund and the city's policy to maintain a fund balance in the MFT fund of 15% of our MFT revenues. The other divisions for the MFT fund is snow removal, so that's the majority of that is salt costs that goes to the MFT fund. We do not claim salary costs for MFT anymore in the MFT fund. We just discussed a moment ago the $75,000 of trees that is spent out of MFT, and then a portion of salaries and wages for the electrical division is paid out of the MFT fund.
So for the new alderman, this is money coming in through these taxes and how it's allocated amongst different categories of our budget. Alderman Bram.
Yeah, and this one I need a reminder, a refresher course. For the MFT, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, we did a home rule sales tax, 1.5 cents per gallon. So does that operate where the state collects those dollars and then we get those dollars back, or how does that work, and where is that in the budget?
So our local MFT tax that we passed, that per gallon, that goes to the general fund to fund the general operations. So the two main funding sources that go to this MFT fund, there is the regular MFT tax, that's a statewide collected tax that then is allocated to the city by a formula. So it's a statewide formula. And then there's a newer transportation renewal fund, which started, I believe, in 2019, that is also operates much like an MFT tax that comes to the city. But the city, you refer to it as home rule, but our own motor fuel tax that we do collect ourselves, the finance department administers that goes into the general fund.
So that's not a revenue source in this area?
Correct, it is not. So this is just state funding that goes to fund MFT. We did receive, over the last several years, the Build America bond funding. That was a state grant program that allowed us to do some projects with those dollars, but those will be exhausted. So now going forward, just the state MFT is the main source for the MFT fund.
Do we know how we compare to other communities? Because I remember the discussion on the dais, there is a lot of concern in regards to, well, how do we compare? Especially in my area, there's 3 gas stations on, one intersection, right? 2 in Bensenville, 1 in Elmhurst.
Correct.
Or, sorry, the reverse now. 2 and 1. How do we compare to other communities with our local motor fuel tax?
I don't think we've updated that recently as far as how our rate compares to other communities, but it's different based on whether it's how much cents per gallon you charge, and then also based off of the number of stations that you would have.
Do you know, I know we did an increase at 1.5 cents. Are we at 2 cents, do you know, 3 cents? And if not, you can get back to me. No reason for a circle back, but I'm just kind of curious on where we're at today.
We haven't increased it recently. I think we're at 1.5, but I'll get back to you to confirm.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll confirm that.
Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. So as we look out in 2025, how should I think about 2025? It looks quite a bit different than history and even what we're proposing for next year. Are there reasons for that? I mean, I'm just confused on
looking at
such material swings and
looking at the fund balance for 2025.
The revenues are higher, the expenditures are higher.
Correct. So right now, we do have more programmed in the fund than we have revenues projected to come in. And we did in 2024 as well. So that was one of the reasons, as I mentioned, we moved some programs out of MFT and moved them into the general fund because funding in the general fund allowed to. So I would say right now, 2025 is a cautionary tale. As we get to 2025, we will see how our revenues have fared, where the projects are. Does the general fund have dollars to support additional projects? But one of the things I did mention is the Build America bonds, which gave us a huge influx into the MFT fund. That program was a state grant program that did end. So, I think we'll have to pace ourselves a little bit more in the MFT fund as far as what projects we're able to complete going forward.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move on to Stormwater Fund 5-24.
There's nothing to report. I don't think we have any. Oh, the only thing we have going in this coming year is design engineering for the Eldridge Stormwater Pumping Station.
So one thing that I would add for the stormwater fund is this does align with the stormwater fee study that we did and the capital plan that was done as part of that that analysis. So really this budget and the 2025 and the CAB really marched right along with what that plan was.
Any questions? All right, we'll go on to the Municipal Utility Fund, 4-1. Christine, you want to explain generally what we do with municipal utility enterprise funds generally, so people understand?
Sure. So the MUF fund, or the Municipal Utility Fund, is an enterprise fund, and so what that means is that the charges for service, or the rates we set, are meant to generate the revenues to support the fund. So think of it like a self-sustaining business, where the charges and rates we set are meant to cover the cost of the expenses for the fund, unlike a governmental fund where there would be an offsetting, tax contribution to the fund. So that's how it differentiates. So think of our water and sewer and water reclamation facility utility like its own self-sustaining business. The one thing I would add is there are also rules on, the rates that we charge for the MUF fund, and the monies collected, by and large, have to stay in this fund. You can't really move money from the municipal utility fund to other funds.
A business that doesn't make a profit but is self-sustaining.
Correct.
Right.
Oh, question.
Alderman Braham.
Yeah, I believe this is where the sanitary sewer lining is located. Okay. I think I've located on the J form, page 416, letter F, as in Frank. I don't know, and I didn't have enough time, I guess, to actually locate it, but I don't know where it is on the previous pages. But with that, I'll just speak to it, is that, during Public Works discussions, I mentioned it earlier tonight, it seems like we're seeing an increase in I&I, even though we've been relatively consistent. At least some money's allocated every single fiscal year for sanitary lining. To me, and with discussions with staff, it seems like, the pipes that haven't been lined continue to break down, and this is not staff's comment, this is my editorial comment, but it seems like at an accelerated rate, because instead of actually evening out or even lessening our I&I, our inflow and infiltration into the sanitary, we're continuing to see it go up. So I would like this item to be a circle back. I know it's a big ask, but I would like to have a better understanding on what would be our return on investment if we do more sanitary lining in the next fiscal year, 2024. Versus less. Because if we continue at this rate where we're seeing more I&I, that means our wastewater treatment plant continues to, clean that wastewater, and that's running more often, running more water flow, and we're incurring costs at the wastewater treatment plant. What line item is that? Do we know? Does anyone know?
That's 570210 on 4-14, kind of the bottom section under capital outlay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Alderman Toledo.
Hi, thank you. Just because this is a very big part of our budget, but I would call the council's attention to the Finance Committee's topic tonight, which was the updated water and sewer rate study. We have not issued any recommendation to the council yet. It is another meaty topic, and there are implications for some significant rate increases over the course of the next couple of years. So I would encourage all council members to take a look at that in the context of this budget, but also in the context of that upcoming recommendation. Thank you.
Do you want to circle back on any part of that?
I don't think we need to circle back because it'll eventually come to the council as a recommendation for what the new water and sewer rates should be.
Okay, very good. Right, on to Parking System Fund 420.
All right, I will take the parking fund as well. So the parking fund, like the MUF fund, is also an enterprise fund. This is to say that is also meant to be a self-sustaining fund. So the parking fund continues to see the impacts of COVID-19 and the change in commuter habits. We are estimating 2023 and 2024 to be about 69% of pre-pandemic activity. So we are still kind of not back to what I would say our revenue pre-pandemic normal was. So that certainly does impact the balance in the fund. So what is included for the revenues is that anticipation of that level in the parking fund as far as some changes that you would note in the budget. So there are some account combinations. One thing that we did mention, which you may see throughout several budgets, is that the city did start billing itself for water. So you will see that as a new account that's really to help us maintain regulatory requirements. And then there is a CAB for parking deck maintenance that is included in the parking fund.
So, I think we've talked in different groups about different there's two things. I think finance is looking at the parking fees, but I think we ought to, at some point, look at other uses for our parking decks. Who else might use this space? Because if it's not getting filled up with commuters, are there other people that might rent space? Although I will say, as one of the people who still commutes a couple times a week, it looks like the garages are filling up more. Do we have data on the trends in parking?
So, we have our revenue trends, and I know the police department does also do counts in the decks as well. So, we are seeing an increase. We've seen improvement each year subsequent to the pandemic, but I think we see that the patterns are different or the usage is different. We do see different trends in not as many people are buying the annual and quarterly permits. Employees, you will see that more where the employees are still buying those, but regular commuters are not buying annual. They're really shifting more towards a daily usage. As far as other uses, the only one thing I would say that we do have to make sure we are aware of as far as other uses for our decks is they do have general obligation bonds. So there are private use considerations that we have to take into account as far as what type of use and whether or not we can proceed with that. So that's something we would just have to evaluate with any other use outside of parking.
And we have some metro restrictions too, I think, on some of those. All right, Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. So I see the last, back to 2021, so all the pandemic is factored into those budget amounts and the deficiencies in the revenues. I think this needs to be a circle up, follow back. I'm not sure what the right term would be for this one, but I would like to go back a little farther and see what kind of revenues it did generate at peak. I want to get a sense of what this has been in terms of a benefit revenue-wise to the city, and I don't have that sense right now.
Mm-hmm. And that's also a project that the Finance Committee is going to look at kind of as we move into December, January, is evaluating the parking fund as a whole from a financial perspective and any shifts that the committee might recommend.
And do we know, has it ever been a significant revenue source directly?
I would not say significant, but it covered its own costs and was self-sustaining.
Thank you.
Alderman, would it be okay if we followed up through Finance Committee with that study, or would you like to see those numbers before that?
I think that would be fine to let the committee follow it up.
Alderman Bastido?
I could probably ask Alderman Hill this because he is very into these parking decks. But I wasn't here, whenever these decisions were made to build the parking decks. But were they intended to be sources of revenue, or were they what you described earlier, like a self-sustaining, non-profitable business that at least just support themselves?
Let me take a shot at that. Each one serves a different purpose. There are some, obviously, that are more commuter-oriented, but the Addison deck was meant more for shopping and downtown use than that. There are reserved spaces for daily parkers, but so each one kind of has a different purpose.
So for Addison, you wouldn't expect it to make as much revenue as like Adelaide or some that are intended for commuter parking?
We do not have different rates based off of location. So in that, we never have, that we never kind of picked, this is a more preferable location, so we're going to charge a higher rate for that. I would say with some of the decks, I believe that the capital fund did always pay to offset some of the debt service, kind of recognizing that it's part, public, city benefit to the community, as well as able to generate revenue. The one thing I would add, as part of the revenue analysis that went to the Finance Committee a couple meetings ago, we did have some pre-pandemic numbers as part of that we can certainly provide as well. That would give some color.
But it was never intended to make money other than to support itself.
No, correct, yes.
And do you look at all of them together as supporting themselves, or?
Yeah, so we don't look at each deck to say, is this deck self-sustaining, is this parking lot? It's really the whole ecosystem of this is the parking that we have available and the cost to maintain it, and what are the revenues that are generating to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Hill?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to clarify, when I asked about significant revenue source, I meant revenue in the sense of covering its costs. So
yeah.
That's what I was trying to get a picture of.
Yes.
Alderman Toledo?
I just wanted to reiterate that the health of the parking fund has been a pet project, I guess, for lack of a better word, of mine and the committees for a couple of months, if not longer. And with respect to staff and the busyness that they're going through right now with the budget season, we have reached an agreement that that'll be one of the first priorities once we get through that process. Okay.
City Treasurer?
421.
Yes.
Do you have any sense of, so at the bottom of this page, there's the kind of what we're drawn from the general fund.
Correct.
I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere in the 581 range to cover the shortfall on the cash basis, change in that position. Do you have any sense of, is that an accurate assessment?
Correct. So I would say absent any change, to either expenses or revenue structure, yes, that 580 would be what we would expect to continue to draw down, and with that, the 1.38 right now that the parking fund does owe the general fund. But that's part of the analysis with the Finance Committee on how do we align this parking fund in the right manner, in the manner we want to move forward.
Anything else in the parking fund? Before we make a quick decision here, hold on. I'm going to, even though I know City Manager would like to knock off one or two more, I'm going to call it an evening here at 9:58 and 30 seconds. So thank you all for your hard work tonight and excellent questions. And we've got a number of circle backs. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Toledo with the motion, Alderman Varamus with a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.